Thinking. Hi, my name is Rory Canterbury. I'm going to be hosting on Arch Talk 101, and we have Aaron on the line with us, and we're going to talk about archery and podcasts and all kinds of fun stuff today. Welcome to the show, Aaron.
Roy, thank you very much. It's such a pleasure to be here. I think we scheduled this about 2 weeks ago, and I've really been looking forward to it.
Good. I always look forward to talking to archers from all over the world. It's so much fun, and it's kind of the highlight of the day. And it's easy just kind of hear what's going on in everybody's world. And so, how about if you introduce yourself and tell our audience a little something about yourself?
Well, my name is Aaron Ritter, and I am a dedicated archer. I love the outdoors. Retired military, Navy veteran. I have my own small LLC business writing speaking platform known as Limitless Outdoors. And I have a podcast as well. It's called the Limitless Podcast. And then I believe the reason why you really wanted to rip a podcast with me, Roy, is I am the founder and president of a nonprofit. It's called the A3G Initiative, the annual amputee archery grant initiative. And it founded to
You're starting to break up.
and now package hands of an E. Interesting. Do you hear me now?
Yeah, your video actually kind of went out a little bit. Now I think you're back.
Okay. Sorry about that. So the A3G initiative was founded to put an archery and outdoor package in the hands of an amputee to leverage the sport of archery for mental and physical improvements in life and their quality of life. And we're in our third year now. So that's a little snapshot about me. I was born and raised in Washington State. I now have retired and reside on the eastern shore of Maryland.
Yeah, that's quite uh, an inspiring thing that you're doing for those that have some challenges. So let's learn more about yourself. I want to get into talking more about that here in a little bit, but first, like, what got you started in archery?
Oh, that'd be my father. I I was uh, I was introduced to the outdoors by my father and his father. They were both avid hunters, avid fishermen. Washington State. I grew up in a small town on the Columbia River. It is called Washougal. It's Southwest Washington, and Washougal is right on the Washougal River where it converges into the Columbia River. So I grew up fishing for what we call silverfish, salmon, trout, and steelhead. I've fished from the bank. I've fished out of float tubes. I've fished out of drift boats, jet sleds, power boats. I've fished all the tributaries in Southwest Washington and a couple of them over in Northwestern Oregon, up and down the Columbia. Um, I was I was raised hunting for deer and elk on Mount St. Helens. My family owned property on the Toutle River for 3 generations. That's where I harvested my first black-tailed deer. My dad put a yellow fiberglass bow in my hands when I was probably 5 or 6 years old, and I would stand in the backyard in front of a hay bale. I'm shooting arrows in the backyard. And when I was old enough, he put a bear recurve in my hands, and I shot traditional archery until I was 16. And at 16, I had a job and I had a car, so I drove into one of the archery shops that my dad spent several decades of his life attending, and purchased my first compound bow, which broke his heart. But it was a Martin Lynx tag. This is back in the 80s, and I transitioned to compounds. I hunted a lot with modern firearm with my father, and but I would transition back and forth between modern firearm and archery. And then I went in the Navy, and I didn't hunt avidly for a couple of years. I was traveling the world and doing stuff for the Navy, but I would come home on leave and hunt with my dad. And And then I got out of the Navy to become a fireman. And that pursuit led me to Eastern Washington, to a city called Walla Walla. And I went to college in Walla Walla for my fire science degree, and was ultimately hired by the city of Walla Walla as a firefighter EMT. And I hunted the Blue Mountains. And that's where I started honing my craft as a backcountry hunter. I started in the mid to late 90s backcountry hunting, solo hunting. And then I shifted that over to the Blue Mountains in the early 2000s. And then I decided to go back in the Navy, and I went back in the Navy into special operations, and um, slowed my hunting career down a little bit because I was focused on deploying and doing things in the world of special operations. And in 2012, I lost my leg after a combat tour in Iraq. I came home and had my leg removed by a tree while riding a Harley Davidson, and spent the next 9 years. Well, not 9 years. I served 9 years on a mental leg, but I spent 2 years fighting to stay back on active duty. And I ultimately received my medical waiver, and I went back to full duty in a deployable status. And when I retired, I decided that going back into the wilderness where I needed to be to continue my journey towards mental health, improvements in mental health, and just going back to my roots. And so I picked up my backpack for pleasure this time, and I got back to my backcountry hunting roots, and that's where I've been, Roy. 2000, and I started really getting back into the hunting world in 2017. Started hunting whitetail for the first time in my life out on the East Coast. I got into tree saddles. Tree saddle hunting and backcountry hunting are my two outdoor passions outside of serving others. And so I have now combined the two. I backcountry hunt with a tree saddle. I do it all over the Appalachian Mountains. I hunt nationwide, but living here on the East Coast, I've really started putting that backcountry tree saddle footprint and applying it to the Appalachian Mountains, and I'm just having an absolute blast doing it. And I do it with a bow. I do it with a muzzleloader. I do not hunt with a modern firearm hardly at all anymore, but primarily archery, and it's a lot of fun, Roy.
Yeah, it sure sounds like, quite a career, Navy and then out of the Navy and back in the Navy and then getting in an injury and it's nice that you're able to continue on life, whether or not you had a real leg or artificial leg. It's nice that you're able to do that and that's real good we can do that. I know there are some challenges out there. Some people have them. I've met Matt Stutzman a couple of times. Um, he's referred to himself as the armless archer. He's born with no arms,
Yeah,
and he shoots a compound bow.
yeah, it's amazing.
Very good shot too. So yeah,
It's it's a mental piece. It's something that I identified immediately walking through the halls of Walter Reed's Military Medical Center. You see men and women that have encountered tremendous physical injuries, and it's typically black or white, Roy. you either you're either defeated and it ruins you, or you overcome it and you become a better person. And I don't like failing. Failure is healthy when you can learn from it, but I do not like failure and to be defeated. So when I lost my leg, I knew that I had to do it better. And once I got my own feet underneath me per se, I decided that I wanted to help other people do it better. And doing it through archery is what I've chose.
now with that, your program that you have going. Let's get a little more detail about how you're helping those with mental and physical challenges in archery and generally just being in the outdoors.
Well, it's a wonderful story. I I was encouraged back in 2017 to share what I was doing as an individual to inspire others. I run marathons, I run ultra marathons, I backcountry hunt, I tree saddle hunt. I I do everything that I used to do with two legs, and most of it I do better now. Believe it or not, I put a lot of time and energy in trying to make that happen, and there's a lot of failures on the way, but I wanted to live my life better, and I through that process I met some incredible people, and I knew that I wanted to do more than just share videos and images and stories about what I was doing on social media. There's more to helping others than just posting on Facebook and Instagram. And so I started the Limitless Outdoors LLC. I do some writing, I do some gear reviews and some self promotion, but that self promotion is showing other people that, hey, no matter what curveball life is throwing you, no matter what injuries or health problems that you're enduring, there's always a way to go out and live out your dreams or accomplish things that you wanted to do. And through that process, I met an individual that is a very well known brand and name in the archery industry, and that's Chris Ham of HHA Sports. And he and I met to do a podcast, and we had some technical difficulties. And so we just sat on the phone and chatted for about an hour. And he shared with me about the reasoning behind starting the HHA USA organization, that 501c3. And when he and I hung up, he had inadvertently planted a seed, Roy. And that was on either a Thursday or a Friday. And I chewed on that for several days. And that next Sunday morning, I was sitting on the couch with my wife drinking coffee, and I knew that I needed to do something different, something more. I wanted to help people. I love watching people learn, and I love watching them overcome and succeed. And I was sitting on the couch with my wife drinking coffee, and I told her, I said, honey, I need to do something more. I want to start a nonprofit. I want to I want to put archery equipment in the hands of an amputee and use that tool to improve their quality of life, their mental health, their physical health, and help move them forward. It was a tool that I used, and it's a tool that I still use. And my wife looked at me and she said, okay, so what does this look like? And I said, well, I want to put together a bow package. I said, I have big dreams. I like to dream big and chase those big dreams. And I said, initially, if it's this first year, I want to put everything that a person needs to shoot. I want to put it in their hands so that they can shoot a bow. They can, they can, they can experience that focus, that relief, that mental clarity that you achieve when you're shooting your bow. And I said, that's what I want to do. And she looked at me, she goes, okay, I'm on board. She goes, what happens if you're not able to get all of that equipment donated? And originally, Roy, I was looking for a basic bow package, a bow, a quiver, a rest, a sight, a release, some arrows, a target, maybe a rangefinder, binoculars. I was looking for that basic archery package to put in the hands of an amputee. And she said, what are you going to do if you can't get that stuff donated? She goes, are you willing to spend our money on that archery package to make that happen? And I looked at her and I said, I am. I said, if you're willing, I am 100% on board with doing that to get this off the ground. And she said, then I'm in. We're willing to help put that together if we need to, because that's what you advertise, and I'm in. Let's do it. So that's what we did the first year. Was overwhelmed by the support of the archery community. Um, we we put together over $8,500 worth of industry leading archery equipment our first year, and we did it within a couple of months. It was humbling to watch, and to be a part of that. Through that process, I met a gentleman by the name of Christopher Dunlap. He's retired Army, lives in Texas. We met kind of through Badlands. We both wear and believe in a Badlands gear, love their camo. And that's how he found me and saw what I was doing. And so he brought me down to Texas to his horse ranch, and he helps manage a couple of ranches down there. And one of them is a 2,300 acre low fence ranch. It's called the 4J Ranch out of Lampasas, Texas. And I went down there, and he and I hunted together for a couple of days. They have whitetail on this ranch and a few hogs. It's hard to believe, but this ranch really does not have a hog problem, and it's in Texas. Blew my mind. But
Yeah.
it is starting to grow a little bit. But when I was there thinking, hey, I might get to shoot a hog. And he's like, yeah, we really don't have a hog problem on the 4J. But went down there for that. And I met the landowner, and the landowner said, I 100% want to provide a hunting opportunity for your nonprofit on my ranch. Let's do this. Let's do an annual thing. And so going into our second year, our equipment and gear package grew, and we added a once in a lifetime all-inclusive whitetail hunt for our recipient. So what does that entail? Roy, we pay for everything. Their travel is covered. Their airport parking is covered. Their airline tickets are covered. Their baggage is covered. We pick them up at the Austin airport. We drive them to the ranch. Their lodging is covered. Their food and beverages for 4 days is covered. It's one-on-one guide. So last year we had the hunt on opening weekend of archery season for Texas. So they were the first person to hunt the ranch. They were the only person hunting the ranch with a one-on-one guide for that opening weekend. Their meat processing is covered. A full shoulder mount is covered. The shipping of all of that is covered. And then we send them home. It literally is a once in a lifetime tail
Yeah.
archery for this person. That's all part of our grant now. So last year we went, so the first year, our grant package was valued at about $8,500. Last year, we estimated it to be around $15,000. At the ATA this last January, Eric Griggs from Gas Bowstrings approached me. Gas has supported custom bowstrings for our grant bows since the beginning. He was 100% on board. And he approached me, said, Aaron, I love what you're doing. I love being a part of what you're doing. I want to offer the A3G an opportunity to add to what you're doing for these amputees. He wanted to establish more of a foundation in the archery journey for our recipient, Roy. So a couple of weeks ago, this event actually took place, and this is how you and I were connected. Eric offered to host the A3G Initiative and our recipient at the gas facility in Kentucky to build the bow with the recipient present, put gas strings on it, and then have his archers that are there, that are on his team and working at the facility, provide one-on-one coaching for our recipient for a day. And so we did. And we now believe that our grant that we do, this annual grant, is value of over $20,000. But what took place a couple of weeks ago at that gas facility, Roy, you cannot put a monetary value on that. It was life-changing for everybody that was there. We filmed it, and we're going to be publishing and releasing a film on it within the next couple of weeks. Everybody that was there walked away different, better, and looking forward to doing it again next year. And I get so excited every time I get to tell the story about what happened in Kentucky a couple of weeks ago. It was inspiring.
Yeah, that was amazing. And to have a full day of one-on-one archery instruction, I can just imagine, um, you know, I've spent 45 minutes to an hour with an archer, and was able to take them, from 8-inch groups down to 1-inch groups. So I can imagine, you know, how the improvement in their archery is by being able to spend most of a day with a coach, learning all the things in there. And then especially if you get a coach that knows how to work through the problems, of somebody with a physical handicap or mental handicap. And it's the part I like about teaching is when all of a sudden that student light bulb goes on and they get what you've been telling them. And that's the part that's really nice when we're teaching somebody is all of a sudden it connects, and now then they're taking it to the next level. And you know that's the fun part of teaching archery is getting all that, and then watching all the growth. And you can't focus on anything except shooting when you're shooting. So you have all the worries you have to go away. And that's the nice thing about archery is while you're shooting that bow, you're only focused on one thing, where the arrow we want the arrow to go.
That's right.
So you got one focus and everything else disappears.
It's that clarity.
Right.
It's wonderful. So the A3G, Roy, and this is something that we need to figure out how to communicate and advertise better. I'm a veteran, and the majority of my board of directors are veterans. The A3G is not focused on veterans. It's any amputee 18 or older in the lower 48. And that may change in the future. And when I say that may change, meaning that we may reduce the age requirement to a younger age. But right now it's 18 years and older for some legal and insurance reasons.
Right.
And also for how we're able to host and conduct things at a couple of at the events, for lodging and care and different things. Right now it's 18 and older. Right now we restrict it to the lower 48 because the individual that donates the funds for travel, we don't think that would be able to cover and afford flying somebody from Alaska, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, Guam, one of our territories. We don't have the funding to do that yet. So right, and also some of the gear that we receive for them, we have to ship that to them, and shipping to Alaska, Hawaii, Guam, Puerto Rico is more expensive. We don't have the
Right.
financial backing yet to do that. So right now, in our third year, our requirements are be an amputee, 18 years or older in the lower 48. You can be male or female, a veteran, a non-veteran. It's your military status, your first responder status is not a requirement. And whether you're an upper limb, a lower limb, a single limb amputee, a bilateral amputee, if you're missing all your limbs, the basis of the A3G is to help that individual, that recipient, learn how to overcome an obstacle and use archery to better their quality of life. And I'm going to use this year's recipient as an example of how that works. We have, when you look at our application, and it's spelled AMP-location. It's an amp location. We have a crossbow on that application, Roy. The only person that, as the president and founder, I will allow to be provided a crossbow is somebody that is missing both of their upper limbs. In my mind, and the mission of the A3G, again, is to help people overcome their obstacles. And that's our slogan, catchphrase, mission statement, whatever you want to say. It is overcoming obstacles through archery. And that's a requirement for me. And when Dustin filled out his application, he selected that he wanted a crossbow. He did not think that he could shoot a bow. He has both of his upper limbs. Now his right hand is deformed, and he has 4 fingers. He has a thumb and 3 fingers, and he has reduced strength and articulation in that right hand, and it's his draw hand. And he did not think that he could do it. And when I called him on the phone to let him know that he was our primary selection for this year, and I told him that I would not put a crossbow in his hands, he didn't think that he could do it. And I told him that that was the requirement. You either put your trust in me and our program and what we have to offer him. Say you put that trust in me and we're going to make it happen. Or if you tell me that you will not try, that you want a crossbow, then I'm going to tell you that we're going to go with our runner up, because I will not put a crossbow in the hands of somebody that has upper limbs. Now, Roy, I want everybody to know and understand that listens to this show, I have nothing against crossbows. I am a proponent for crossbows. I own one. I've harvested deer with one. I harvested deer with a crossbow because growing up in Washington State, I wasn't allowed to do it. They were illegal. And my dad had no interest in a crossbow. I wanted to harvest a deer with a crossbow. So I bought one, and I did that. Then it became a tool for me that I use as a low barrier of entry for people to get them into hunting and or archery. I can take somebody that has never shot a bow, that has never been hunting a day in their life. I can bring them to my location. I can introduce them to the crossbow. I can teach them how to shoot the crossbow. We can go through crossbow safety. We can talk about ground blind safety or tree stand safety. I can take them out into the field, and I can assist them in harvesting their first whitetail deer. And I can do all of that within a 3-day weekend with a crossbow. I can't do that with a regular bow. So I still own and care for and will use, I have a Mission Sub 1 crossbow. That's what that tool is used for. I'm a huge proponent of crossbows. I don't look down on anybody that uses them. But what I will not do is put that tool in the hands of an amputee that applies for the A3G initiative if they have both of their upper arms. Because again, the foundation of my grant, the foundation of this program, is to help people overcome their obstacles. I want them to learn and see that they can get better, and then they can apply that to so many other aspects of their life. So I had that hard conversation with Dustin. And at the end of our conversation, Roy, he said, okay, I'm going to do this with you. And I said, yes, you are. So we took him to gas. When he arrived, he had so much apprehension and anxiety and thoughts of failure weighing on him. And we surrounded him with positivity. We brought him into gas, and I can't thank Eric and his team enough. It was like we were family, like we had been 10-year employees for gas, and that we were a relative. They brought us in with open arms. The hospitality was stupendous. And we spent that afternoon and evening together. We ordered food in and had lunch right in their pro shop area in the range. We started building the bow. We started immediately overcoming obstacles, Roy. One of my board members, Chris Dunlap, who's my hunting coordinator, he built 2 half-dozen arrows for Dustin in his little home pro shop, for us to use at that event, because we didn't know where Dustin's draw weight was going to fall, what category he would fall in. So Chris built 350s and 300s for the event. His bow case and that arrow tube didn't leave Austin with him when his flight departed. So he arrived Kentucky without a bow or that arrow tube with the arrows. So Chris had to sit in the Kentucky airport waiting for his archery equipment to arrive so that we could get the arrows down to the facility. The archery shop that donates the Hamsky Rest, Frontline Archery donates a Hamsky Epsilon every year for the archery package, and they have Hamsky customize that bow rest, and it says Limb-itless on the bow rest. Well, this year when it arrived us and we took it out of the package at the gas string facility, the bracket that holds the Hamsky Epsilon onto the bow was not in the package. It's somewhere along that path of opening the package and customizing it with Be Limb-itless on the bow rest, and then getting to the gas facility, that bracket ended up missing. And so we had to figure out how we were going to overcome that. All of these things were happening. We're, you know, Dustin is there on site looking at the archery range, looking at his bow, the excitement there, and everybody's positive and building him up, but you can still, he just keeps saying, if this happens, I don't know if this is going to happen. I don't know if I can do this. And we were up with him at 10:30 until 10:30 at night, talking to him about what was going to happen the next morning. And then we went to gas, we had the tour, and did some final checks on the bow. Finally got the rest on the bow. We didn't overcome that obstacle until the next morning, and we walked him down to the 10-yard line. And again, he's a lower limb bilateral amputee, and had not come to full draw with the bow before. And so I had Michael Sims is another one of my board members, and Chris Dunlap. I had each of them on the front and back of Dustin. That way, if he fell in one direction or the other, we could
Right.
keep falling to the ground. And it's like, hey, let's move up to the 10-yard line, just see how you do. And he drew that bow and put an arrow right in the bullseye. And it was a point of celebration, Roy. I mean, when it happened, that arrow hit the target. It was like the whole facility just went quiet. You could hear a pin drop for a second. It was awesome. And then just the emotions erupted. And we took a couple of more shots at 10 yards. And Eric and Braden Galantine said, okay, let's move back to 20. It's time. We know that you can draw the bow. We know that you can shoot the bow. We know that you're not going to put an arrow through the wall or the roof of the facility. Let's move back to 20. And Dustin went from that moment of, holy cow, I can do this, I'm so excited, to looking at the 20-yard line, and you could see a little bit of that anxiety and apprehension start creeping back in. Like, wow, that's twice the distance. That looks like a long ways. 10 yards to 20 yards to a new archer can look like a long ways.
Yeah.
What's going to happen here? We walked him back to the 20-yard line, put up a fresh target, and he went to full draw and put it inside out on the lower right X leg of the X. Just hammered it. And again, just more celebration. The smile on his face, Roy. I mean, the video that we have of him, the pictures that we have from that moment, man, it makes me get emotional every time I look at them, every time I share them, every time I get to talk about this moment. It was just incredible. And every time that he drew that bow back, every arrow that he put down range from that moment on, you could just see him change. The confidence level that was growing with inside that young man. He was born with deformities. He had been living with disabilities his entire life. He's 24 years old. And this young man has been living a life of giving back to others throughout all of his adversity. He experienced the Shriners, assistance from the Shriners. And when he turned 18 and was no longer eligible for that, he started volunteering with the Shriners and giving back to children that were dealing with disabilities the same or similar to his. He's a troop leader for Trail Life, which is similar to Boy Scouts. It's more faith-based. He's a substitute teacher. He's a volunteer firefighter. He gives back to society on his own. And to be able to be there and to give to him and to help him overcome hurdles that he never thought that he would be able to do, it was awesome. Roy, it was so awesome. And not only that, he grouped arrows all day long. By the end of that first day, he was shooting confidently to 40 yards.
That's quite an accomplishment, from not even thinking you could do it at 10 to now grouping at 40.
Yep. We have so much great support. Chris Ham at HHA Sports and HHA USA has been just a major influence in my life in the last 3 years. We've had a couple of different bow manufacturers through the program. Hoyt provided the bow this year, but their connection with us has been a deeper connection than the previous 2 years. In the bow companies, or I should say the bows that were provided to us over the previous 2 years. Hoyt's been incredible. Um, Gas Bowstrings and Eric and his team, they've provided bowstrings the first 3 years, but for them to host us like they did was awesome. Robin Parks with Hot Shot Archery, they've they have provided the peeps and the releases for the previous 2 years. This year, we knew that we had an obstacle to overcome with Dustin because of the deformity in his draw hand. I got on the phone with Robin and talked about release options. And Robin said, Aaron, I have the perfect release for you. And so he sent it's called the Hayes. It's a thumb release, but it's on a wrist strap, because Dustin tried a index caliper release and he can't manipulate the index trigger correctly due to his hand deformity.
Right.
So, I sat on the phone and brainstormed with Rob, and he said, Aaron, I have the perfect release for you. And he sent the Hayes. It was brilliant. It worked brilliantly. Um, HHA Sports puts the bow sight on the bow every year. Lakewood sends us a bow case every year so that they can put their bow and their arrows in when they travel. We have a myriad of other folks that I could sit here and just list, Roy, that have been instrumental in making this 501c3 successful. But for that moment, that time at Kentucky, those were the major players that made that event happen. Vortex, binoculars and a rangefinder for him to use on the range and out in the field. And it's just, again, I was talking about a crossbow, and that I'm adamant that I will not give a crossbow to somebody because they want it, or because they need it, or because they want to replace their old one. We only give a crossbow to somebody that's our only option to make them successful. And that we have the support of 10 Point found out about us. I was introduced to them, and they are 100% on board with putting a 10 Point in the hands of a recipient if that ever happens. But it's trusting the people around you, the archery community. When you get off of social media and all the garbage and trash that
Yeah.
litters social media, when you get boots on ground with the archery community, it's a family. It's so positive, it's so supportive. And when people find out about other people that are trying to do great things, they want to be a part of that, and they want to help people. And when we can take all of those tools at our disposal, and we can take the positive, faithful outlook that we have at the foundation of A3G, and we can pull in that recipient and say, hey, we can use archery to change your life, because it's changed my life. It's changed every member of my board. I'm sure that archery in some way, shape, or form has changed your life, and probably nothing for the better. And when we can do that, we get to do it every year. And it's one of my favorite things to do now.
Yeah, that's archery. By this podcast, I've talked to archers all over the world, and what you're saying about the archery community, it's like a family. So you know I've seen that, and if you listen to many of the podcasts, you're going to see that I might be talking to somebody over in Serbia, or Bosnia, or Germany, or anywhere else, United Kingdom, um, Ireland, all over the world, and of course a lot of them in the United States here, but it's all there. Sometimes we have to use a little bit of translate on some words that don't translate very well, but um, that's the thing. It's if you have a bow in your hand, an archer sees you, you're automatically a friend. Now, we may not be able to speak your language, or you mind, but Google Translate will help. So,
Yeah.
we can
Oh,
communicate, and if you're helping somebody out, you don't have to speak their language to help them out in archery. You can teach somebody, help them out with different things, and you don't have to tell them a word, because a lot of them understand. And when I'm teaching, I have a specific way I teach, but I also teach why I tell you to do it that way. And that helps get it through. And I just tell everybody, I teach everybody the exact same thing, and then we modify it for each person.
and I don't care what you shoot, Roy. I personally, I have two Hoyt compound bows. I have a Mission Sub One crossbow, and I have a Tolkien longbow. I I love all of it. Now I don't actively shoot my crossbow. I hunted with it for a season, and I harvested a couple of whitetail with it, and I use it for a specific tool now. But I love shooting a longbow. I love shooting my compound bows. I love hunting with my archery equipment. I love going to a total archery challenge and launching carbon shafts at 140 yards for fun. But when I go out in the field, yeah, I won't. The longest shot I've ever taken on an animal is 40 yards to date. Would I shoot a deer or an elk at 50 or 60 yards? Maybe. If the situation was 100% perfect and I was 100% confident that I could ethically take that animal, I might take a 50 or 60-yard shot. I would much rather it 10 because I know that my lethality at that range is lights out, and I can do that with a wooden bow or an aluminum bow or a hand, a crossbow. I know where my ethical range is, but across that board, I might not be able to interact with everybody in a positive manner on social media. Not on my end. I just don't engage that way on social media. It's not worth the time and energy. But
Right.
when I go to the archery shop, when I go to an archery range, when I go to a 3D shoot, if I'm out in public and I see somebody wearing a Matthews hat, I don't shoot a Matthews, but I know I can go up and talk to that person. If I see somebody that has a tree saddle sticker on the back window of their vehicle, I know that I can go talk to that person. When you get face to face with somebody, or when you're in an event with somebody, you know that you're going to have a positive interaction. You're probably going to gain a friend. You might possibly learn something, and you're going to be better for that moment in time. And that's what I love about the archery community. It's so positive.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And um, you know, I've got a Ben Pearson 25-pound fiberglass recurve from the 60s. It was my first bow. I don't shoot it anymore. It still has a string on it, but I won't string it because the fiberglass pins hole. It's not very good. I have a PSE recurve. I have a PSE Carrera, a PSE Scorpion, and then I have a Bear. I forget. I bought it a few years when I worked at Cabela's. We got a lot of returns in, and they was selling them off to whoever really cheap. And I managed to get this $900 just plain bow for $100, $200, something like that. But I had to fix it. Being a tech, I had to fix it. I had to make a new string and all that kind of stuff for it. And I never shot it, but you know, um, brand doesn't really matter as much. Um, most bow manufacturers nowadays, they all make good bows.
They're all incredible.
Yeah. Pick one up, put it in your hand. Does it feel good? Okay. Consider. If it don't feel good in your hand, put it back. It don't feel good. You don't want it. I know PSC bought Browning Archery, and they come out with a bow that had counter rotating cams at the top, so they rotated different directions, which was interesting. And I was like, this is kind of cool. And I tried to set it up for me. I could not get that bow to set up for me for nothing. I wanted to shoot it, and it just would not fit me. I don't know what it was, but there's nothing I could do to get that bow to fit me like it should. So I ended up, selling it off. I thought, oh, this is kind of cool. It's different. but you got to put them in your hand. And that's what I tell new archers is, if you're going to get a right-handed or left-handed one, pick the bow up. If you don't like what it feels, put it back. If you like the way it feels, go shoot it. It's got to feel good in your hand. And there's a lot of things you can do. I help out at Nebraska has their Missouri Valor Outdoor Expo once a year, and I helped out with last year and this year. And this year, a lady come in was missing basically from the wrist forward on one hand, the left hand, and so the lady that runs a lot of the outdoor events for game and parks for the archery stuff, she took her over to the other one, and they had her shooting a bow. Within half hour, 45 minutes, they had her shooting a bow. She didn't have a hand to hold the bow.
It's
So what
amazing.
they did is they took an arm guard and wrapped it around the bow to hold it, and another arm to hold it to her hand. So the arm guard was holding it, and then she worked with somebody that does leather work, and they actually made a specific sling that wrapped around the bow that would fasten to the wrist, so somebody without a hand could actually hold the bow. And then Matt come by, and so they connected those two together so Matt could help because he don't have any arms and he shoots compound. So they was able to get connected to help her get set up. And that kind of stuff is what's the fun part. It's figuring out how to get something a little different. And in teaching archery, and I spent 20 years teaching Hapkido. So each person, you teach the same technique, but one person may not be able to do it. Somebody else, you have to teach them a little differently. So you can only tell somebody the same thing multiple times, so many times before it doesn't really do any good. So that's kind of the fun part is figure, okay, how can we solve this? Just like I had a guy call me up one time at my store. It says, can you set my bow up to shoot two arrows at the same time? He called the other two shops and I said, no. They just flat out just said, no. I said, well, stop in after I close because you can't afford me while I'm open. And so we played around for a while. Fortunately, it was not a center shot design riser, so we had to stick on rests. So we was able to do that, and we played around a whole bunch of stuff. And by the time we got done, the difference between his space and two arrows was about an eighth of an inch. Every time we shot, we measured it. About an eighth of an inch is the most variation we had between where they were the impact and the distance between them. And you learn a lot about how to set up a loop, because he wanted to use a release. And what
Okay.
it was a motivational speaker, and he wanted to get the kids' attention by taking two arrows and shooting two arrows at once and hitting two balloons or whatever it was, and get their attention, and then now go on whatever he was talking about. And so that was kind of fun. That kind of stuff is interesting to do, and you have a problem and solve it. Now he didn't have a physical problem, but I had one guy come in and he had MS, so he could not have the normal bend in your arm that you would normally do. We had to lock it out. So I had to figure out how to do that so he could lock out his arm so he could actually hold it and not hit his arm. So we would play around different things and set things up a little differently and overcome the problem.
It's not I tell people it's not a matter of whether you can or can't. It's your want.
Right.
And and that applies to so many things. There's people out there that make a tremendous amount of money, but their credit scores like 300 or 400 because they don't pay their bills. It's not because they can't. They have hundreds of thousands of dollars in their bank account. They just choose not to pay their bills. So that's not a matter of can or can't. It's want. I don't want to sit down and pay my bills. It's the same thing with the physical ailment. It's not whether you can or can't run a 5K or a half marathon or a marathon. It's whether you want to. And if you're missing a leg, how bad do I really want to run that distance? Because if I want to, I can figure out a way to do it. I never ran a single marathon before I became an amputee. I always said that I wanted to. I said I wanted to, but I never really wanted to because I never did it. I was fully capable of it. I'd been a runner my whole life, but I never ran a marathon until after I lost my leg. And after I lost my leg, then it became a holy cow. Am I going to be able to do this? I need to try, because that's one thing that I wanted to do in my lifetime, was to run a marathon. And so I did it. And after I did it, I became a little addicted to it. And then I ended up running ultra marathons. Right now, my personal best distance is a 60K. And again, that was all on a prosthetic leg. And I say that because apply that to a person that looks at archery, that might be suffering from a physical or a health impairment, and they think that itself is going to keep them from being able to do it. And it's not whether you can or can't, it's whether you want to. Because if you want to, you can get the support of people around you that are going to help you accomplish
Right.
that goal. Just like you were talking about the individual that was missing the arm, and started taking leather products and the arm guard and straps and fashioning a way to secure that bow so that they could shoot that bow. If you want to do it, we're going to find a way. But that want's key. I
Right.
just love I
Yeah.
love watching that happen. I love watching the light bulb come on. I love how it can change somebody's life, because again, you can apply that to so many other areas of your life, not just archery or running or a lifting, like a weightlifting process, or whatever it is. You can see that accomplishment start impacting other areas of somebody's life. You just have to have the want.
Yeah. So how many do you take a year on one of these trips?
Right now, just one, Roy.
Just
We
one?
with and we've talked about maybe changing that in the future, but right now, looking at our board structure and the support that we have, and again, financially, we have no financial backing right now. So our board members spend a lot of money out of pocket for certain aspects of making this happen. So right now, with our board and our board members and the companies that are supporting us, and like the ranch owner, I don't know if is willing to host multiple people on the ranch to hunt. And so looking at the hunting opportunity and the opportunity for processing of meat, and and the mount and the travel, and then all of that, it's I right now it's one recipient a year. And we also, right now, we like that because we're able to make that person the focus of our year. It's a very special person to us. And we're working to try to like come up with some type of an alumni program, so that our very first recipient can interact with our third recipient, so it almost becomes like a family, and they can start
Yeah.
supporting each other as well. And and I've looked at other organizations, Roy, that they'll go out for a day or a weekend, and they'll host maybe 15 or 20 people, whether it's veterans or it's other disability categories. But I look at veteran organizations quite a bit because I'm friends with some of them, and I'm a veteran myself, and so I do have a soft spot in my heart for my brothers and sisters. But I
Right.
look at some of these other organizations, and they're maybe every couple of months, they're going out and they're doing a big golfing tournament or a golf outing, or they're going on a fishing trip, or they do a camping trip or something. And they have 5, 10, 15, 20, people there that are attending and a part of it. And there's been times where I look at that and I think, man, I need to be able to impact more amputees than just one a year. But then I look at what they do and what their process is, and then I look at what we do, what we're doing in that year time frame. And right now, I think we're doing it right. I think that by taking that one recipient, by going through that application process and interacting with that person and really getting to know them on an individual basis. And now we get to take them to gas. Although Eric at gas, when it was over, he looked at me, he's like, Aaron, when are we doing this again? Is there somebody else that we can do this for this year? How many more do you have this year? I want to do this again, because again, I stated earlier, it had such an impact on everybody that was there. It makes you hungry. You want to go do this again. And it's like one person a year right now, in order to do everything that we're doing for them. I don't know if we can do that for multiple people a year right now. Would we like to? Obviously, we'd love to. But right now we're not able to.
Yeah, and if you just take, taking them to gas, if you just do that part of it, that's not the complete, everything where you take and you really make a change in their life. You just, well, you're getting a bow set up, you're getting some instruction, that's not as I don't see that as, the complete transformation that you're able to do with somebody when you spend a whole year with them.
And we've grown. Like the first year, it was an archery package. And we had some outdoor stuff included in that, but I met the recipient at an HHA USA shoot up in Wisconsin, and I drove up there with everything in the back of my truck. And we presented all of it to that recipient, Andrew Masick, in person. There was no hunt involved. We were at a shoot together. We got to shoot some targets together. In fact, and Andrew texted me yesterday, and so we're still in contact. Last year, our recipient, we took him on the first deer hunt weekend, and it was amazing. And he left that event and he came on the board for a period of time. And so we had that level of interaction. And now this year we have this interaction with Dustin to where, now we had the gas event with him and we're going to take him on the deer hunt later. And I communicate with Dustin weekly, and we're interacting with him through his process of obtaining a career, and working on other aspects of his life and engaging with him. Several of us on the board are texting him. Eric Griggs is interacting with him on a personal basis. It's that growth. And just as the foundation of A3G that we want to help people overcome obstacles, our own 501c3 is growing and overcoming obstacles. And we just want to continue to grow in that positive direction. Where that's going to take us, I don't know. It maybe in years to come, we'll offer to 12 years and older, or maybe we'll have an adult recipient and a youth recipient, or maybe we'll have 3 recipients in a year. I don't know. I don't know what that's going to look like yet. But right now, I do know that next year we are again going to be one person, an amputee, and it's going to be 18 years or older in the lower 48 until something different, something comes along that changes that direction. But regardless, it is an amazing program to be a part of.
Yeah, it sure sounds like you're doing a lot of good work. And once you start going, this is what you said, your 3rd year doing it, and things can grow really quick, really big, really quick, with the right, stuff in play.
Yes, it can. Well, can I answer any more of your questions, sir?
Oh, well, that's been, that's been a lot of good information, and you're, what you're doing for, the people with those, the problems, whether physical or mental, and just the mental change from, the last recipient, or I don't think I can do it. I don't think I can do it, to, they're doing it. And that's the hardest thing. We've talked about that before in archery. Now, archery is a mental game. You're
100%.
you're gonna talk yourself out of that perfect shot. One of the things I used to do is I'd take a horizontal line and a vertical line, and just have them shoot at the line, anywhere on the line, and they're hitting this 1 inch wide circle is, I take, a marker or something and, or print out of just a line and they hit this 1 inch line horizontal and vertical. And then when you look at it, it's like, that's an X every time. They're hitting it every time. But then you put on an X, they can't hit it.
Yeah.
What changed? It's the mental aspect of that. And, right there, when I use that, it's like, okay, you can hit a 1 inch wide line. Don't care where you hit it. I can hit a 1 inch horizontal line. So that means you should be able to hit the X ring every time because you're hitting that line every time.
Mhm.
And then they shoot at the X and then they miss it. Well, why? It's all mental. And, you hear them say a lot, if you think you can, you think you can't, you're right.
Yeah, and people talk to me about firearms. Yeah, I made a living with a firearm for a long time. I I I'm a proponent. I'm a firm believer in my Second Amendment. But I think and I know there's guys that might argue this. I know there's people out there that just love going to the range and shooting their firearms. And I love to shoot firearms, but I believe there's a significant difference between shooting a firearm and shooting a bow. I I don't believe that there is the same mental improvement in firearms as there is in shooting a bow. And I can shoot my archery equipment almost anywhere I want to. I can shoot inside my house or my garage. I can shoot in my shop. I can, as long as it's legal, you can and safe, you can shoot in your backyard. You can go down. There's a lot of local parks that have archery ranges. You can go down to your local park and shoot an archery. Go down to your local archery shop. They typically have some type of an indoor target you can shoot at. You have archery clubs. You can go to all these different archery events and you can shoot. You can shoot for yourself. You can shoot for a team. You can shoot in competition. You can go out to a 3D range and again just shoot against your own, like try to increase your own capabilities, and or you can go out and have some fun. I mean, you can do it at an Olympic level if you have that talent. There's so many ways and places that you can go and shoot your bow. And you know, with a firearm, you can go to the range with a box of 20 rounds, and once you pull the trigger 20 times, you're done. You either have to go buy more ammunition or you're going home. With a bow, if you buy a dozen arrows, until you lose or break those arrows, you just keep shooting those arrows just over and over and over again. And you might be having a bad day, and if you have the ability to walk out into your shop or your backyard, it takes one arrow. If I'm having a bad day, a lot of times I can pick up one arrow and I can walk out to the target, pick a range, and I knock that arrow and I draw, and everything else just goes away. And the only thing that I'm focused on is putting that arrow where I want it to go and execute that shot. And when it's done, sometimes that's all I need to do to change the needle on that daily compass into a different direction from wherever I was going. One arrow. Maybe sometimes I might shoot 3, 5. I might end up shooting for a half an hour. I don't know. Just depends on what the day needs. But I do know I do try to shoot one arrow a day. And sometimes it's all it takes is that one arrow to change my mental clarity for that day. You can't do that with a firearm. I live in an area where I can walk out on my back porch and shoot a gun. It's not the same.
Yeah,
But
it's not.
that's a world
I,
according to Darren Ritter and Limitless Outdoors, right?
yeah, yeah. In high school, I spent all 3 years on a rifle team, doing a lot of shooting and just like you said, there's still something different about shooting that bow as opposed to shooting that rifle or handgun or whatever gun you choose to shoot. Now, don't get me wrong, it's still fun to shoot them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, but it's still my preferred weapon is still my bow. Although sometimes, depending on what's going on, I've got to use a firearm for it instead. But um, that's just whatever you want to use is fine. And, we talked about, the different types of bows and crossbows, I've got a description of archery. It's a stick with a string flinging another stick. It fits that category. It's archery. So what is a crossbow? Basically a stick with its string flinging another stick. What's a recurve? Compound, longbow. They're all sticks with strings on them flinging another stick.
Yes, sir.
That's archery. So um, now when you get into crossbows, there you need to have a little bit different target. Somebody come into my range when I had my store, I might recommend them putting a crossbow target up because they're so short they'll get buried in the foam target sometimes because it's not really designed for crossbows. The one thing I didn't let them use is broadheads.
Yeah.
Had a big old sign, $500 fine for shooting a broadhead into my target because it just tears them up, those layered foams. Um, but yeah, it just doesn't matter what type of archery it is as long as it's archery.
I was listening to I'm a big Phelps game calls fan, and I listen to their podcast Cutting the Distance as much as I possibly can. And they they had a host here recently on one of their newer podcasts, and the topic of crossbows came up, and this individual stated it very well. And he said, I've never had a crossbow hunter ruin one of my hunts. He was like, I don't what I don't care if you shoot a crossbow. Just go hunt. Be ethical and go hunt. He's like, a guy carrying a crossbow in the woods has never ruined one of my hunts. And if somebody is in the woods and they ruin my hunt, it doesn't matter if they're carrying, whether they're carrying a compound bow, a traditional bow, a crossbow, a muzzle loader, a shotgun, a rifle. If somebody ruins my hunt, it's not because of what they're carrying. It's because of what they're doing.
Right.
So as long as you're out doing it, as long as you're buying that hunting license, as long as you're being safe, as long as you're promoting and being positive and joining together in the outdoor and hunting community and perpetuating that tradition and that lifestyle of being in the outdoors and pursuing wild game, I don't care what tool you use to do it. Just be positive and go do it. It's I just that's I don't know why there's so much animosity about a crossbow, but I do enjoy the fact of, in the military, all the branches give each other a hard time. It's happened since the branches were created. There's just always the joking and we have fun. But at the end of the day, if somebody that's not in one of those branches starts causing an issue with any of us, we're all going to back each other's play.
Right.
And I feel the same way about the outdoor industry. And for me, when I'm out, I will, again, it doesn't matter whether or not you would prefer to shoot a rifle or a muzzleloader or a crossbow or a traditional bow or a compound bow. At the end of the day, as long as you're doing it right, if there's somebody there that's against hunting, I'm going to stand behind you and promote what you're doing to continue to promote what we all love. And that's being in the outdoors, pursuing wild game. That's the most
Yeah.
important to me.
Yeah, it is. And that the ones that anti-hunt, how much do they actually spend to promote wildlife as opposed to us hunters? They don't spend anything. We spend hundreds of dollars all supporting wildlife just so we can take care of them. And we like, when we kill an animal, we want to do it as quickly and cleanly as we can. You know, we don't like tracking them if we can help it. We've all done it. We've tracked some and never found them. Um, you know, we've spent 5, 6 hours sometimes trying to find that one animal that you hit that run off, not hurt, that you didn't even get a good hit on it. And and then you just do what you have to do and try and find them. If you do kill one, um, just do your best to find it.
Well, sir, do we want to talk about any other topics?
Well, tell us a little bit about Limitless outdoors that you have.
So, Limitless Outdoors is where really it all started. And it is the canopy for everything that I do. So, Limitless Outdoors, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I have a website, I do have a YouTube channel. Um, I I promote the outdoors, and it's not just about hunting. I promote an active, healthy lifestyle. I like to interact with people and engage on running, functional fitness, hunting and fishing, backpacking. I do. I've published a couple of articles for some magazines. I published a blog on occasion. I do some occasional gear review. The A3G Initiative is a domain of Limitless Outdoors. Limitless Outdoors is an LLC. A3G Initiative is a 501c3 nonprofit. I do have a podcast. It's called the Limitless Podcast. And it's based on the outdoors. It's not necessarily focused on hunting, but I typically gravitate towards hunting, and a lot of it is archery. And so that's Limitless. I do some keynote speaking. You will find me annually at some of the major outdoor shows, one or two a year. I will go and I will speak. And it's typically either on tree saddle hunting or backcountry hunting or the combination of. I absolutely love both of those. I spoke about it earlier in the podcast. That is outside of hunting people, tree saddle hunting and backcountry hunting is my passion. I backcountry hunt for turkey, deer, elk, bear. I tree saddle for all of the above except for turkeys. And pick a state. If I can find terrain features and an area of ground that can seclude me from other hunters, whether I'm packing in a half mile or I'm packing in 5 miles, I don't care. I will throw a pack on my back. I will pack in, pitch a tent, and I will go harvest animals in that area away from other people. I just find a tremendous amount of enjoyment and satisfaction in doing that.
Yeah, if you get away from where there's, everybody likes to go in, just what's close and convenient. You go back that little bit further, then you don't have the traffic back there. The animals a lot of times not as disturbed as much. So you get to see a lot more stuff. And that's one of the things I like as an archer. You're sitting up in that tree stand and you just see so much stuff. You hear stuff that nobody else gets to hear and see. Like birds come landing right next to you on a branch, or um, worst thing, a squirrel's trying to climb up the tree because they'll climb right over the top of you because they don't see you.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, if you're in camo, a squirrel doesn't know what you are. They'll just stand there and look at you. You can be
It's
moving around. They 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 can't comprehend what you are, and they'll just stare and look at you.
Yep, but that's basically what Limitless Outdoors is, Roy. It's my platform, and again, it started out as yeah, I just promoted the stuff that I was doing to try to inspire people to go out and do what they wanted to do, to live without limits, and that is again grown into I do writing and speaking, and I have a podcast, and I do a little bit of self filming and I try to help people as much as possible. I believe that there's that knowledge is power, but sharing that knowledge is powerful, and I want to watch other people be successful, and so that's the foundation of who I am and what I do.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'll leave a link in the description when I post the podcast, as well as when I put it up on the YouTube channel. Um, I'll leave links to all that. So just message me all the links to all the different places and whatnot, and I'll make sure I get those in because I may not remember all of them. To make it easier for them if they want to contact, watch your pod or listen to your podcast, or contact you for anything else. Anybody that wants to help out, you know, I'm sure you'll take donations on any kind of help that you can get for your next recipient. And I'd also like to invite any of your past recipients or any of the new ones to come on the podcast and we can talk about, what it's done for them. I think that'd be good stories too. So
That would be amazing.
yeah, check with the other three recipients, and if anyone come on, let's get them on the podcast, and then, let's talk about, how they've transformed or what it's done for them and what they're doing now. I think that would be interesting stories. I know I'd like to hear it. And I'm sure a lot of my listeners would like to hear those stories as well, because there's just so many stories. We get into stories and stories and stories, and it's just so good. Some of them are interesting stories, and some of them are emotional stories, and it's just such a variety of stuff out there. So, you've listened to some of my podcasts, and you see each one's kind of a little bit different. We'll start with archery, and then where we go from there doesn't matter. Wherever it takes us. And for those that listening, you can watch this video in Arch Talk 101 Facebook group. You can also watch it on my YouTube channel, Learn to Fix It Yourself. And I'll leave links to those in the description as well. You can also listen to the podcast on Spotify as well as Audible. And I'm sure your podcast is on Audible as well. I think we talked about that before we got started.
It's on
So
so I published my podcast on YouTube and all of the major podcasting platforms.
yeah, and I'll leave links to those in the description, make it easier for them to find the podcast, and let's get the word out. And if you know anybody that might be in need of Aaron's services here, get a hold of him and fill out that application, because I'm sure there's people out there that can take advantage of this, because it sounds like from what you said, it's like this can change somebody's life immensely.
That
You
is
know,
that is our intention. The application period is from January 1st until April 15th of every year. You can go to the website, and when it's open and available, we have a pop-up window. It's very simple. It's a Google form. It's all electronic. So you go to our website and click the link for it. It'll populate that Google form, and you fill out all the information and agree to some of the things that we require, and hit submit, and it comes to the board. And after April 15th, we review all the applications and individually, and then we come together as a board with the top recipients, and we then the fun begins.
yeah. What was the name of that website where they go to?
It is the A3G Initiative.org.
Okay. Yeah, well, so I'm sure we'll have some people come out there and look at that. Let's get the word out, and that we can help them. And if there's anything that we can do, outside of that, if you're struggling with something, get a hold of one of us. That's what's nice about the Facebook group, the Arch Talk 101 Facebook group, and I'm sure your Facebook group as well. Um, if you're having a problem, post what you're having a problem with. And if you have a video, it's even better. Upload a video of what's going on. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that can take a look at that. I know in my group, the Arch Talk 101 group, we have instructors that have been teaching for many years. We have bow techs around. We have some archers that are just brand new, and we have archers that have been in shooting for 50, 60 years. So there's somebody out there that's seen what your problem is, and sometimes we can help you, and sometimes we can't. But hey, let's work together. And if we need to get on a Zoom call like this to finalize some little problem, that's always an option to do that, to help you out.
I'm here and happy to help.
Just get a hold of us, and if you've made it this far, been great. I know I've had a whole lot of fun talking with Aaron here on all the things he's doing. It's real inspirational of what he's doing and how he's helping archers. And let's get this going and keep this going, because the archery family is going to help you. You just need to ask, and that's the biggest thing. You need to ask, because there's a
Absolutely.
lot of us that help. I know I keep my instructor patch on my quiver, figuring if I'm out shooting and somebody has a problem and see the instructor patch on there, then they come ask me. I don't generally go up to somebody, hey, I can make you shoot better, because they're off doing whatever. But if they're struggling with something, I'd be glad to help.
That's fantastic.
Well, any parting thoughts before we end this podcast?
No, sir, I've had a great time. Thank you so much for hosting me on your show.
It's been a lot of fun. My name is Roy Canterbury. I've been host today on Archstock 101, and we'll catch you on the next one. And make sure you leave a comment, and we'll talk to you later.